bedroom is freezing. It is perhaps 4 in the morning in the dead of a British winter, 1968. There is no heating on. There won't be, not until the timer clicks on at 7. On the inside of the single glazed window, a delicate filigree of ice has formed. The cold is not just outside, it is in the room. It's in the flocked wallpaper. It's in the heavy eider-down quilt. The cough comes again. A floorboard creaks on the landing. A sliver of light appears under the door. A mother silhouetted in a wool dressing gown, her hand reaching into the darkness of the airing cupboard. It's a space that smells of hot water pipes, dry wood, and something else. Something sharp and medicinal. Her hand finds the small cold blue glass jar. The metallic tang of the lid twisting open releases a scent so powerful it cuts through the chill. Menthol, camphor, eucalyptus. It is the smell of Vicks, the unmistakable potent smell of winter, the smell of being looked after. This cupboard was the home's first line of defence, a fortress of simple things, all waiting for the cold to strike. To understand the contents of that cupboard, one must first understand the enemy it was designed to fight, the British winter. Today, we think of winter as an inconvenience, a number on a thermostat. But in the 1960s and 70s, winter was a physical presence. It was an occupation. It was not the dry, crisp cold of other lands. It was a unique British cold, a damp, penetrating chill that seeped through brickwork and settled in the bones. The air was thick with the smell of coal smoke and fog. The smog was a genuine choking hazard, and the houses were not built to fight it. Central heating was a luxury reserved for the very new or the very wealthy. For most, the home was a patchwork of microclimates. The living room was the only truly warm place, heated by a single glowing electric bar on a 2-bar fire, or perhaps a gas fire with ceramic panels that hissed. You would toast yourself by this fire, your front side roasting while your back remained cold. Everywhere else was a frozen territory. The kitchen floor was a sheet of ice-cold lino. The bathroom was Arctic. The bedrooms were where you saw your own breath plume in the air before you dived under the blankets. Children woke up to find ice on the inside of their windows. They suffered from chilblains. Painful, itchy red swellings on fingers and toes, a direct result of the constant damp cold. This was not a theoretical hardship. It was a daily, seasonal reality. And it was all underpinned by the shadow of 1963. The Big Freeze of 1963 was not a distant folk tale. It was a fresh, traumatic memory for the parents of this era. It was a winter that began on Boxing Day 1962 and didn't release its grip for 3 months. Rivers froze. The sea froze in harbours. In some parts of the country, snow lay in drifts 20 feet deep. Milkmen couldn't get through. Power lines came down. For months, Britain was locked in an Arctic siege. This event forged a deep-seated winter anxiety into the national psyche. You could not trust the winter. You could not assume the supply chain would hold. The winter was a threat, and to fight it, you had to be prepared. This preparation wasn't just about stocking up on coal, it was a deeper, psychological mindset, born from an even greater shadow, the war. The 1960s mother, stocking her winter cupboard, was a child of the 1940s. Her formative years were defined by rationing, scarcity, and the Blitz. To her, waste was the greatest sin. You did not throw things away. You used every last scrap. This mentality did not simply vanish when rationing ended in 1954. It was ingrained. It became a permanent part of her character. This was the generation of self-reliance. They did not have the luxury of a 24-hour culture. When the shops shut at 5:30, they were shut. There was no late-night pharmacy, no all-night supermarket. The streets fell silent, and you couldn't just call a doctor for a simple cough. The National Health Service was still relatively new, a miracle, but you did not bother the doctor with trivialities. A cough, a cold, a scrape, a fever, these were domestic problems to be handled by the domestic manager, Mum. The home was her domain, and the cupboard was her arsenal. It was a place of thrift. Old glass jam jars were washed and saved, bits of string were rolled up. Nothing was discarded if it might one day have a use. So the cupboard wasn't just a place to store food, it was a pharmacy, a first aid station, and a pantry for a siege. It was stocked with the assumption that, for a few days at least, you might be on your own. You had to be able to treat a fever, soothe a burn, feed a family and warm a child, all with what you had to hand. The items within were not glamorous. They were not chosen for their branding or their flavour. They were chosen for their utility, their shelf life, and their concentrated power. A tiny bottle of antiseptic, a small tin of condensed milk, a cube of dried beef stock. Each item was a small, potent brick in the fortress wall against the cold, the dark, and the sickness that winter brought. From this dual mindset, fear of the winter and a fierce, ingrained self-reliance, the contents of that cupboard become clear. It was divided into two distinct arsenals, the items for sickness and the items for sustenance. The medicinal arsenal. First, the items for survival, the small bottles and tins that held back the winter illnesses. 1. Vicks VapoRub. This was the king of the winter cupboard. That little blue jar, the smell alone was a medical event. It was the scent of 100 British childhoods, a potent blast of menthol and camphor that promised relief. It was never just used, it was administered. A thick, waxy layer slathered onto a chest, a small dab under the nose that made your eyes water, and for the truly afflicted a small blob dissolved in a bowl of steaming hot water, a towel over the head, creating a makeshift sauna that felt both suffocating and life-saving. It didn't just clear the sinuses, it commanded the entire room. 2. TCP antiseptic. If Vicks was the smell of a cold, TCP was the smell of an injury. A tall, distinctive glass bottle with a simple white and blue label. The liquid inside was a pale, innocent yellow, but its smell was anything but. It was a chemical, phenolic, overwhelming odour. It was the smell of clean, but a clean so powerful it bordered on industrial. A capful in a bowl of warm water to bathe a graze, or a dab on a cotton wool bud for a mouth ulcer. It stung. Oh, how it stung. But in that sting was the reassurance that it was working. It was a no-nonsense, harsh, and utterly trusted guardian against infection. 3. The hot water bottle. This was the only central heating the bedroom ever knew, a slab of thick, often red, rubber with a brass stopper that screwed in. It smelled faintly of warm rubber and hot metallic water from the kettle. The ritual of filling it, carefully, avoiding the scalding steam, then burping the air out. It was a small, comforting weight. Tucked under the covers 10 minutes before bed, it created a small pocket of tropical warmth in an otherwise frozen landscape of sheets. It was a companion, a comforter, and a simple, ingenious piece of 1960s technology. 4. Lucozade. Long before it was a sports drink, Lucozade was strictly for the sick. It lived in the cupboard, waiting. It came in a large glass bottle wrapped in that iconic crinkly orange-yellow cellophane. Just the sound of that cellophane being unwrapped was a signal that you were officially, properly ill. The liquid itself was fizzy, impossibly sweet, and tasted like nothing else on earth. It was a glucose-based pick-me-up, the 1960s equivalent of a restorative potion, prescribed by mothers for everything from a fever to a stomach bug. 5. A tin of elastoplast, not a plastic box, a tin. A small, flat, rectangular tin, often with a slightly rusted edge. Inside, the plasters were not the pale plastic strips of today. They were fabric, a tough, beige, slightly grubby-looking fabric that was powerfully, painfully adhesive. They were robust. They were designed to stay on through a game of street football and a bath. Taking one off was a test of endurance, a sharp rip that left a sticky, grey residue for days. They were badges of honour. 6. Milk of magnesia. The solution for the internal troubles. A thick blue glass bottle filled with a liquid that looked like chalky white paint. It tasted exactly as it looked. A thick, cloying, minty chalky substance that coated the tongue. It was the universal dreaded cure for indigestion, or an upset tummy in an era of heavy, starchy food. It was a trial to swallow, but its presence in the cupboard was a non-negotiable staple. 7. Gripe water. For the very youngest in the house, this was the magic elixir. A bottle of clear liquid that smelled strangely of aniseed and dill. It was for wind or colic in babies, but it was so famously effective and sweet. that older siblings were often caught trying to sneak a taste. It was a small bottle of peace and quiet for a fraught mother. 8. A bottle of aspirin, not in a blister pack. They came in a small glass bottle, often with a cotton wool plug at the top. The tablets themselves were hard, chalky, and bitter. They were the adult cure-all, a headache, a fever, muscular pain from shoveling snow. Take an aspirin. They were the simple, straightforward solution. These items formed the core of the domestic pharmacy. They were not gentle, and they were not sophisticated. But they were effective, trusted, and always, always there. But survival was only half the battle. The other half was morale. And that was fought with the second arsenal, the hoard of tinned comfort. The comfort and sustenance hoard. This was the arsenal of warmth and morale, the items that provided calories and comfort when the world outside was grey and frozen. 9. A tin of Carnation evaporated milk. This was the emergency milk. A small paper-labelled tin, kept for the day the milkman couldn't get through the snow, or for the end of the week when the top of the milk was gone. It required 2 triangular holes to be punched in the lid with a special, or just a sharp, tin opener. The milk that poured out was not milk as we know it. It was thick, slightly greyish beige, with a sweet, unmistakable tinned smell. Poured over tinned fruit or a bowl of cereal, it was a creamy, slightly caramel-flavoured treat. 10. Bird's custard powder. This was the smell of Sunday. A bright red, yellow and blue cardboard canister. Inside a fine, pale yellow, chalky powder that smelled faintly of vanilla and chemicals. The ritual was precise, mixing the powder with a little cold milk to make a smooth yellow paste, before adding the hot milk and stirring, always stirring, until it turned. The resulting custard was luminous yellow, sweet, and scalding hot. Poured over a suet pudding or a baked apple, it was the ultimate non-negotiable winter comfort. 11. A tin of ambrosia creamed rice, the instant comfort classic, a simple, paper-labelled tin. For a mother with a sick or cold child, this was a 5-minute solution. Opened up, it was a thick, white, glutinous mass. Heated gently in a pan, always sticking to the bottom, it transformed into a sweet, creamy, comforting pudding. A blob of jam dropped in the middle made it a feast. It was a hug in a bowl, a simple, warm, filling reassurance. 12. The Lyle's Golden Syrup Tin, a true British icon. Not a plastic bottle, but a heavy dark green metal tin with the famous lion logo. The lid was a challenge, often glued shut with crystallized syrup. Inside, the golden syrup was a thick, amber, viscous river. It was the magic ingredient in steamed puddings, the topping for porridge, or, in a moment of pure childhood indulgence, eaten straight from the spoon. It was the taste of pure, unadulterated sweetness. 13. A box of OXO cubes. The smell of a 1960s kitchen at 5 o'clock. A small red cardboard box. Inside, each cube was a tiny foil-wrapped parcel of compressed flavour. Unwrapping one left a dark, salty, beefy residue on your fingers. OXO cubes were the foundation of all winter stews and gravies. But more than that, they were the emergency drink. Crumbled into a mug with hot water from the kettle, it created a beef tea, a savoury, salty, warming drink that was given to children and adults alike as a restorative after a cold walk home. 14. A Tora Sweat. This was the fuel of winter, a bright blue or red cardboard box containing shredded beef fat. It looked like waxy white confetti. This was the secret high-calorie heart of the great British winter puddings, the steak and kidney pudding, the jam roly-poly, the spotted dick. Mixed with flour and water, it created a uniquely heavy, dense and satisfying dumpling or sweat crust that was designed to provide the maximum possible energy for a body fighting the cold. 15. A tin of emergency condensed soup. Finally, there was the emergency meal. A small squat tin of Heinz cream of tomato or oxtail. This was the quick lunch on a day too cold to do anything else. You added a tin of water, or milk for the tomato, heated it, and served it with a slice of white bread. It was salty, it was simple, and it was hot. These 15 items, a mix of the medicinal and the comforting, were the quiet guardians of the British home. They were a testament to a generation's resourcefulness, and there would come moments, in the deep cold and the dark, when this humble cupboard was not just a convenience, but the only thing holding the chaos at bay. The climax of the cupboard's importance wasn't a single day, but a series of moments that defined the early 1970s. This was the era of the 3-day week, of energy crises and industrial disputes. Winter was no longer just a fight against nature, it was a fight against a failing infrastructure. Imagine the scene. It's 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. It is already pitch black outside. The wind is howling. The electric fire is glowing orange, but it's a small victory against the chill in the room. Suddenly, a click. The television screen contracts to a single white dot and vanishes. The orange glow of the fire dies instantly. The room plunges into absolute shocking darkness. The only sound is the wind and the sudden heavy silence inside. The cold, which was waiting in the corners of the room, pounces. It feels instantly, dreadfully colder. A child's voice, anxious. "Mum?" Then, the calm, unpanicked response from the mother. "It's all right. Stay where you are." A moment later, the scrape of a chair. Her silhouette moves towards the kitchen, a small clink as the cupboard door opens, the same cupboard. Her hand knows exactly where to go. A rattle from a small box, the sharp, sulphurous scratch of a match. A tiny flame erupts, illuminating her face. She lights the candle, a simple, white candle, stored in that cupboard for exactly this moment. She brings it into the living room. It's a tiny, flickering light, but it pushes back the darkness. It creates a small, brave circle of warmth. The children are still cold. "Put the kettle on, love," she says to her husband. The gas hob still works. The cupboard provides again, the emergency OXO cubes. Minutes later, the family is huddled on the sofa, sharing a blanket, sipping hot, salty beef tea from mugs. They are lit by the flickering glow of a candle. In this moment, the cupboard is everything. It is the provider of light against the darkness and warmth against the cold. It is the arsenal of resilience, the symbol of a family's ability to cope, to make do. This was the cupboard's finest hour. But even as that candle flickered, its necessity was already beginning to wane. The very crises that made it so vital were also accelerating the desire for a world where it would no longer be needed. The battle for warmth was about to be won, not by candles and OXO, but by a force that would change the British home forever. The turning point for the winter cupboard was not a single event, but a slow, quiet revolution that rendered it obsolete. It was the Great Thaw, and it was fought on two fronts. The first, and most important, was the arrival of widespread, affordable central heating. Throughout the 1970s and booming into the 1980s, gas central heating became the standard. It was the ultimate domestic aspiration. Suddenly, the enemy was beaten. The damp, penetrating cold that had ruled British homes for centuries was banished. The ice on the inside of the window vanished, never to be seen again. The chilblains disappeared. The single-bar electric fire was relegated to the attic, a relic of a harder time. For the first time, the entire house was warm. The kitchen, the bathroom, the bedrooms, all were now habitable, comfortable spaces. This profound environmental shift had a direct impact on the cupboard. The Vicks and the TCP were still there, but they were called upon less frequently. A warm, dry house is a healthier house. The constant winter cough became less common. The hot water bottle, once a vital survival tool, became a nostalgic comforter. The Atora sweet and the heavy puddings designed to fuel a body fighting the cold were still eaten, but they were now seen as stodgy, not essential fuel. The second revolution was the supermarket. The 1980s saw the unstoppable rise of the supermarket, and with it, late-night shopping. The old world of 5 p.m. closing times was obliterated. You no longer needed to hoard. If you ran out of milk, you could pop out to the late shop at 8 p.m. If a blizzard was forecast, you didn't rely on your larder. You joined the national panic buy at the supermarket. The emergency tin of Carnation milk became redundant. The emergency tin of soup was replaced by a freezer full of instant meals. The very concept of self-reliance, born from scarcity, was replaced by a new glittering god: convenience. The fortress had been dismantled. The fear of winter had been replaced by the inconvenience of winter. The cupboard, once a vital arsenal of survival, slowly transformed into something else. It became a place of memory, a dusty archive of a time that had, almost without anyone noticing, slipped away. The items were still there, but their meaning had changed. This is the cupboard of today, and it is not a fortress, it is a library of choice. Where the 1960s cupboard held one type of antiseptic, the modern one holds a dozen. TCP is still there, perhaps, but it sits next to Savlon, Dettol, Germolin and Sudocrem. Where the old larder held Oxo, the new one holds Sriracha, gochujang, dark soy, light soy, fish sauce and porcini mushroom powder. The singular, stolid tins of ambrosia-creamed rice have been replaced by a spectrum of carbohydrates: quinoa, basmati rice, arborio rice, couscous, penne, fusilli, and udon noodles. The culture of just-in-case has been replaced by a culture of just-in-time. We no longer stock against a lack of food, we stock for a variety of recipes. The items in the old cupboard were a testament to resilience. The items in the new one are a testament to our globalized palates and our disposable income. We have more choice than any generation in history, but that choice has fundamentally changed our relationship with the items we own. The old items that have survived have done so by becoming icons of nostalgia. The blue Vicks jar is still sold, but now it competes with night nurses, decongestant sprays and electric diffusers. We buy it as much for the memory of its smell as for its efficacy. The Lyle's golden syrup tin is still available, but it is a retro purchase. The convenient plastic squeezy bottle is the one we actually use. We have become curators of our own domestic museums. These items, the TCP, the bird's custard, the Carnation milk, are no longer tools of survival. They are edible memories. They are echoes of a time when we were looked after, a time when a simple hot yellow custard was the single greatest comfort in a cold world. We have gained so much in choice and convenience, but in doing so, we have lost the very mindset that made that cupboard necessary. The final legacy of the 1960s cupboard is the one we only see when our modern system fails. We have gained a world of convenience, but we have lost the muscle of resilience. The post-war generation, with their deeply ingrained memory of scarcity, would be horrified by our fragility. They were prepared for a siege. We are undone by a rumour. A single news report of a lorry driver shortage, or the forecast of a snow bomb, is now enough to trigger a national panic that empties entire supermarket chains in hours. Our just-in-time supply system is a miracle of modern logistics, but it has no resilience, it has no fat, it has no backup. The 1960s mother was the backup. Her cupboard was the buffer zone between the family and the world. She didn't trust the world to provide. She expected the milkman to get stuck in the snow. She expected to be ill and unable to go to the shops. She expected the power to fail. And she was ready. We have outsourced that preparedness. We have placed our faith entirely in the complex, globalized 24-hour infrastructure. We no longer have an arsenal against the cold, just a thermostat. We no longer have a hoard against scarcity, just a credit card and a nearby superstore. When we see those empty shelves, we are seeing the ghost of the 1960s cupboard. We are feeling, for a brief, terrifying moment, the exact anxiety that our parents and grandparents lived with as a permanent condition. The difference is they knew what to do. They had the tools, the mindset and the items all waiting quietly in the dark. They had the Vicks, the Oxo and the tinned rice. We are left with an empty shelf and a sense of profound modern helplessness. Today our cupboards are brighter, they are warmer. They are filled with an abundance and a variety that our parents and grandparents could only have dreamed of. The chilblains are gone. The ice on the windows is a memory. The damp, pervasive cold has been defeated. By every measure our world is better. It is more comfortable, more convenient and infinitely easier. But when we remember that old winter cupboard, we are not just remembering the items. We are not truly nostalgic for the taste of evaporated milk or the harsh sting of TCP. We are nostalgic for what they represented. That cupboard was an archive of a generation's character. It was a physical manifestation of thrift, of forethought, of an unspoken practical love. The smell of Vicks VapoRub is not just the smell of menthol, it is the scent of a mother's hand, warm in the middle of a cold night. The taste of bird's custard is not just the taste of vanilla, it is the taste of Sunday, of comfort, of a small, bright moment of sweetness in a grey world. Those items were the promises kept, of a generation that believed in being prepared, a generation that showed its love not through words but through the quiet, steadfast act of making do and looking after. The cupboard is gone, as is the world that built it. But the memory it holds, that sense of being cared for, of being safe in the face of the cold, that remains locked away, as potent and comforting as the day it was sealed.